Welcome back to Second Nature, episode number 92, getting dangerously close to 100. We are officially over 1 year old. We just passed our first birthday. Aaron Lutzy, what up?
Happy birthday to both Second Nature and to you, Debo.
Yeah, my 39th was on Monday
I
this
think
week.
all the best people are born in March. You, me, I think Ryan Thrower, right? There's
Absolutely.
a long list of March birthdays and all of my favorite people. So,
Yes. Happy birthday to us.
and 100 episodes. I mean, we're close. And in
Close.
fact, we recorded a handful of other ones, so we're even closer than 92.
Yeah.
So it's coming.
So, to our listeners, I guess maybe we should get to this real quickly before we launch into the docket. For our 100th episode, I think we're going to run back what we did for the 50th episode, that being an Ask Me Anything. So, if you are in the Second Naturalist community, throw those questions in Slack, and Aaron and I will do our best to rattle through a few of them as we approach episode number 100. Hard to believe, but we're having a ball. Time flies when you're having fun, right?
It feels like it was 2 weeks ago that we recorded episode 50, and now we've done twice as many episodes, basically. For anybody that's in the Slack channel, it's the podcast topic channel where we've been kind of collecting. And we've got a grip of questions and topics already, but yeah, there's some really interesting ones where we could probably do an entire episode on some of those questions. But I'm really curious to see what else pops up in the next couple weeks as we get closer to recording that too, because there's a lot to discuss.
Heck, yeah. Docket today, Aaron got inspired, was thinking about a lot of things as it relates to the outside conversation that we had a couple of episodes ago. Kaylee Fretz's article over at the Escape Collective, what the path forward might look like for this struggling, though iconic outdoor media empire. Aaron, should we launch in there?
Yeah, I think the real question is what would you do if you were in Robin Thurston's shoes at this point with the cards that you've been dealt and what needs to be true for you to move forward? And I think maybe where we started the last conversation was the sort of initial point of we want this to be a global home for athletes. We want outside to embody that. I think a really fun place for you and I to start the conversation is what would need to be true or what might that look like? And we could just take outside completely out of the conversation if you want and say, if you were going to make a global home for athletes, what might that look like? Or we could, just address outside directly and try to diagnose and recommend what they might do to get there. I'm happy to take either path or a little bit of both, but does that seem like a fair place to start and just kind of riff? I mean, this is sort of like a galaxy brain sort
This
of
is
riff.
just full on armchair executives here.
Yeah.
If we were plugged in to the decision making roles, how might we add
How
some
might we?
stability and forge a positive path forward for outside? Do you want to get started here, Lucy?
Sure. I mean, I actually, you and I were talking about this on the phone yesterday, and I think I had sort of maybe dismissed is not the right word, but I think I'd kind of pushed back on your last galaxy brain of like Patreon for the outdoor athlete already exists. It's called Patreon or Substack. But if you are outside and you have the attention, the ability, the history, and you truly want to be something for athletes, then maybe this is the thing that we should chase after. What would the Patreon for the outdoor athlete actually look like? And would outside actually be pretty teed up to execute upon exactly that? And I think that could be like we're going to smash together this outside conversation and your galaxy brain into one place because I think if you reconstructed this thing or restartup as our friend Max likes to talk about, I think you could probably pull it off and not only do something interesting, but do something valuable. Because I think one of our diagnoses for the outside situation was that they're fighting too many wars on too many fronts. Another thing is that, this activity feed and some of the stuff they're trying to do, it's like a solution in search of a problem. And so one of the problems that actually does exist in the world of outdoor is getting proper support so that you can continue doing the thing. And so having a Patreon for the outdoors feels like a good place to reorient some of the effort. And I think that actually, if we dig a couple layers deeper into the outside thing, they might have some resources that make a lot of sense for this conversation.
So, but how do you make it work? Because obviously, in order to stay in business, outside would have to be capturing revenue. So, how could they create an incentive structure to make it so that people would use their platform like the Patreon of the outdoors?
Yeah.
I mean, because that was something that Robin mentioned when he was on the podcast, right? Is like, why can't outside be? I think he said Substack, right?
hmm I think it's possible. And I want to share a really outside case study with you. And I think people will find this really interesting. So there's this video that landed in my inbox a couple weeks ago, and it was sort of joking, but also there was a nugget of truth and something interesting in it. And basically, what's happening is people are making tutorial videos on like how to do coding or how to do, some high level skill. And instead of putting it on YouTube, they're putting it on adult websites. And the reason for that is that the adult websites actually monetize at a higher rate than YouTube. And so people are putting like how to code in C++ or whatever on those platforms because they're video hosting platforms, and they're making more money than if they had on YouTube. Now, is the entire coding community going to jump over to those websites? Not likely, but those people have found a way to succeed. And the lesson that I take from here, I promise this is coming back to the outdoor community. But when Elon Musk took over X, he was really committed to getting more creators, video creators on the platform. And he took calls. There was a call famously with Colin and Samir, who are, kind of the second nature of the, community, creator community. But he took a lot of calls with creators to try to understand what would need to be true for you to bring your content here. And one of the things that was common in all those discussions was monetization at a level that is incentivized for us to move our attention over there and bring our audience over there as well. If you look at cases like Twitch, there have been live stream competitors in there was a platform called Kick. There was another platform called Mixer that Microsoft famously owned, where they started paying creators more to bring their audiences over onto those platforms. And the incentive for the creator was higher. Now, one thing that we know to be true about B2B media specifically is that the rates for advertising and stuff are higher than traditional media because the audience is more targeted. And I guess where I'm going with this whole thing is what would need to be true for outside to create a place that solved a lot of problems for athletes and creators. Number one of them being monetization. And because it's a hyper focused niche and because they have access to advertisers already, could they actually create an environment and a flywheel for athletes and creators to bring their audiences over there? Because obviously they're not going to be able to do it on their journalistic stuff alone. They're losing talent in that way. But could they incentivize people in a meaningful way? If I was going to make twice as much money on Outside's platform than I was on YouTube, that would be a compelling reason to come through. And then start connecting the dots with the other things that you have in your network with Outside. How might that play into me getting opportunities to produce other stuff or to be involved in film tours or to be involved in written stuff or incentivized by what they're doing with Intopia, where if somebody books a trip, then I get a kickback on that. I think that if you had someone who had a creator mind and could create a situation for the creators come over to Outside, you could bring a lot of trust and authority to Outside that would not be a heavy lift for Outside to do, but you'd be shifting to the creators to bring both the audience as well as the credibility over.
So the hard part is to develop the incentive structure to give those creators and athletes a reason to repurpose their content onto Outside rather than any number of current distribution platforms, Substack, YouTube, podcasts. etc. And your argument basically is they'd have to, in the same way that these quote unquote adult websites are paying higher CPMs, that's the way that outside would have to go too. Probably easier said than done, but I think you and I are approaching this with a similar mindset. As I was thinking about this, like, what would I do? Armchair executive. And again, nobody should take any advice from me. Let's just start there. But we sort of touched on this in our last conversation, in that when outside was rolling up all of these entities, the I think unifying, I don't know, like they all feel like last generation's media publications, that haven't evolved as well into this new generation of creator-led media in niche outdoor communities in this case, but it's sort of a trend that's happening in any category in which media exists, even in B2B. So, for example, you've mentioned Cullen and Samir. Those are creators that are they are B2B creators in the same way that you and I basically are here on Second Nature. Also, the same is true with consumer facing media, right? Like Free Trail is, a media company and a brand, but at the same time, it is creator led. Myself, Ryan, Corinne, etc. There's personality behind it. And if you look at the brands and entities that are within the outside portfolio right now, can you name like a single compelling creator in their mix? I mean, I know Pink Bike, you've mentioned, is sort of like the flagship media property that seems to still be doing well and putting out high quality content in this era. But like, for example, Outside owns Trail Runner magazine. Abby Levine is a great writer who's been publishing over there, but some of the other marquee people that I've been enjoying reading for ages have been laid off recently. And, going back to Kaylee Fretz's article, his whole argument is sort of like, well, what is outside if it's not a media company? And all the recent decisions make it clear that they're not thinking of themselves as much like a media company when they make this big acquisition for a travel booking platform at the same time that they let go a lot of the creative talent on the editorial side. So that's a signal to subscribers, myself included, that our product is no longer the quality of content that we're putting out. And in my mind, if we're coming back to this theme of the show today of what would we do armchair executive style, it would be to redouble down on content as the core center of the flywheel that would spin things around it, like this Inatopia thing, like pushing people onto their mapping softwares, which you and I have both vocalized our love for. And I mean, I was using Gaia this morning on my run, and as I think about it, in my community in trail running, there's definitely a lot of people who want to be creators, right? But as you and I both know, it's hard to make content creation a full-time job for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's an opportunity for outside to find people like creators in outdoor sports, trail running, mountain biking, hiking, skiing, snowboarding, give them a platform to, develop an audience, to tell some stories, to do cool stuff, have it feel more in line with the way people are consuming content nowadays, which is like developing a personal relationship with an individual, not like developing a long-term affinity for a masthead. And, then if you can prove out that concept that, creators have a home at outside, you're developing, new talent within the ecosystem. And then maybe that's an opportunity to then spin up something like this rev share idea that you sort of brought up. So I don't know. It's not a fully formed idea, but as I look at the list of the brands that they own, right? It's like Backpacker Magazine, Ski Journal, Yoga Journal, Trail Runner Mag, Triathlete, Peloton Mag, like iconic media outlets, but outlets that definitely feel like from a different era, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that you're sort of circling around too is that if we're looking at new media, which whether this is a journalistic platform or a digital platform, we're going to have to set that one to the side for a second. But I think that if you are trying to develop either of those things in this era of media, to not have a creator specific agenda is sort of a giant hole in your strategy. And I think that there is content coming from Pink Bike for sure, where they're creating a lot of content. Ben Cathro does a great job on their channel, but Pink Bike even is sort of more aggregate than it used to be, where you can see a press release just getting posted by the company and Pink Bike reposting it. And that's a dangerous place to go. If Pink Bike becomes only aggregate content, then anybody can come in and eat their lunch. And in fact, I'm so curious to see how this Recon MTB thing goes, because we're going to get them on the pod here pretty soon, but they've really attempted to do this content to commerce model where they are creating really high level content. And, if they continue to make custom content the entire time, and they start really doubling down on it and they start bringing creators in, how is Pink Bike going to compete with that other than to double down on creators? And so I think there's so many different categories where you could offer creators and a leg up. And also, you think about this acquisition strategy, maybe what you should have been doing is acquiring, YouTube channels or creators that
Yes,
way.
that's what
And
I mean. That's exactly was my point.
yeah,
Is like maybe they bought the wrong things when they were bringing this whole thing together.
yeah, they bought distressed media instead of
Exactly.
the stuff that was on its way up.
Like I wonder how many of those operators and ownership groups were happy to sell in that moment.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I mean, again, we've talked about this in the last episode. When they were doing this, and I can't emphasize enough how important I think it is that we acknowledge this fact that when this was happening, everybody thought it was a good idea. Everybody was like, damn, Robin's a genius. This is fantastic. This is going to save all these media entities, and having this singular place is like actually a good idea. And, you know, again, things change and not everything works out the way that you expect it. And I think this is a good example of that. But my general thesis is that if media is not at the core of what outside is going to be, then what is? Like because it is now this sort of confusing conglomerate of so many different entities that don't really touch each other in a really coherent way, there needs to be something in the center that does bring all that together. Right. And media needs to be that thing in the center that then is like, oh, yeah, hey, you want to book a trip to Jackson Hole to go skiing? Use Inatopia. Hey, you need to map out the next route for your trail run? Why don't you go over to Gaia? Hey, are you interested in like checking out a really cool experience of like outdoor and industry stuff? Come to Outside Festival. And then you touched on something that I think is interesting, and I'm very excited to also dig deeper into this Recon MTB thing, because I think there's a lot of stuff that we can learn there. But also, that's not guaranteed to succeed.
no,
But my thought also was that clearly they're going to be working on sort of like an affiliate model. Why couldn't Outside do that? Because one of the things that Kaylee said in his article is that Outside buyer's guides are still tremendously attractive to brand people. And if that's the case, if Outside is still very influential in buying decisions for consumers, why don't they put themselves a little closer to that transaction, And maybe the better idea is not to be the Substack of the outdoor industry, but to be the Amazon of the outdoor industry,
I think there's probably like the content to commerce thing probably works if you reorient some of the stuff. And I think that a big chunk of it, again, the puzzle piece that's missing is how do you pull creators into that? And not just the people that maybe you acquire somehow, but also how do you make it so that people could start and build a platform there? What would be the reason why you would do it there versus just Instagram? What would be the reason why you would do it there instead of TikTok or YouTube? And I think the incentive structure needs to exist and it needs to be made easy. And I think that if you have this creator piece figured out, that's the thing that's probably going to unlock some shred of hope, some glimmer of
Exactly.
hope, right?
Okay, so if we can distill the one thing that you and I are definitely agreeing on here is that outside needs to find talent. Like they need talent there.
Yes, but I don't think it's as simple as just saying like, "Hey, here are the top 3 mountain bike channels. Here are the top 3." I think they need a structure so that everybody could come in, because YouTube is great because Mr. Beast is there, but it's amazing because there's like a million people trying to be Mr. Beast and they're all putting all their heart and soul into making content, and the ability to see all these incredible things in one place and the ability that anybody can succeed on this platform is what makes it special. What's frustrating about, everything so far is that there's no incentive for me to go and post here when I get not only better engagement, but I get better monetization elsewhere. Like, yeah, I love the outdoor industry and I maybe want to see these guys succeed, but like, I got to eat. And so why should it just be three people that get paid? I think they need to have like, hey, here's where you can come in and this is where you're going to, this is how you're going to be compensated for your effort here. And also, and this is what I think outside could do that a place like YouTube couldn't. Hey, we have a direct line to all of these advertisers who are looking for creators. Here's we're going to have you come on the Warren Miller tour with us because you're a top creator on the outside platform. Like there's a lot of stuff they could do to incentivize creators within the industry that YouTube can't do for them. So they do have some competitive advantages if they would orient themselves towards what would be the best and most beneficial thing for the creators. What gets them incentivized to bring their audience over here to begin posting on here? And what would this look like if it were beneficial to them?
So rather than having owned IP, this would be user generated content on their platform, is what you're saying.
Well, let's be fair. Everything's user generated. Like you're the author of an article. You generated that. Like what difference,
I mean, it's interesting to think about. That would be obviously a huge pivot away from having their own IP. So I guess we're approaching this as like, my suggestion is like add some real talent via individual creators to outside's owned media IP. Your idea is to maybe get rid of this IP altogether because it's sort of it's decaying and becoming less and less relevant. Also, as Kaylee argued in his article, and instead lean into becoming a platform for creators to build their own audience.
Okay, actually, I want to take this and I want to add to it a little bit. I'm going to suggest that we run what I call the divorce dad's playbook.
Oh my God. Okay, let's
ready?
go. Let's go.
All right. So I don't know if this is common or not, but a lot of times when people split up, the dad maybe isn't as valuable or as like exciting to go hang out with. He lives in a 1-bedroom apartment. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the dad tries to do things that the mom maybe wouldn't do. Maybe the dad goes and gets a house with a pool. Maybe the dad takes their kids to Disneyland, does different things to like make it exciting to come hang out with him, where the kids want to go there more often, right? And he, or it doesn't even have to be divorced dads. Like when mom says no, and then the kids go to dad, and he says yes, right? This is basically what I'm after here. So what can outside do? Like think about all the feature requests that Strava has been hit with over the years. What if they were just like, hey, we heard what you guys wanted out of Strava, and we just did that to Trail Forks and Gaia, so now you've got it here. Or we know that you wanted Patreon to to have a built-in feature where your Strava stuff popped up alongside your training logs or whatever. And so we did that here. Like they actually have a lot of IP that could be built into this thing to make that Patreon for the outdoors. Like just like you're saying, what if they made it easier for a athlete to become a coach? What if they made it easier for a creator to have a, role at a brand? Like what if they connected dots in a way that no one else could and they offered things that no one else would?
The divorced dad's playbook.
Just like, I mean, all those feature requests are out there, and some of them, for example, a podcast player in a training app would be somewhat easy to put together. What if you're just like, we heard you and we just did everything you wanted?
All right. So I'm compelled by your argument, but I still think that going my route, adding creator talent to existing outdoor IP is the easier place to start because, realistically, they got to hire 10 creators who can put out consistent content, audio, video, and written stuff, people who have reputations in their community. And then outside would be providing more of a platform to those individuals so that they can build their brand and their influence in a community under the outside umbrella. I just pulled up Outside's whole portfolio here, and I want to come back to this idea that there needs to be something that brings all this together, because otherwise it is just this confusing mess of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be something that makes this a coherent ecosystem. And my view is that it has to be media. And I have a hard time visualizing it being anything other than owned media. So just rattling off some of the things that are not media related in the outside ecosystem. Gaia GPX, Trail Forks, Athlete Reg. So this is an idea. Is like in the same way that Outside wants to be part of the transaction for when people are booking trips through Inatopia. How come they're not being part of the transaction with registration to races, for example? Yeah. I've never used Athlete Reg, I don't think, in my life. I'm not sure I've ever even heard of it, but I'm assuming that's what it is like an event registration. Warren Miller Entertainment, I mean, technically media, but more of an event. Outside Festival, more of an event. Outside Learn, which I think is the rebranding of Rome, which was owned, I think, by Patrick Crawford. It was purchased by Pocket Outdoor Media and then rebranded through Outside. So that was an interesting platform where they used influential people in their individual communities to lead educational online workshops. So, for example, I think they had Jimmy Chin doing like how to be an outdoor adventure photographer type thing, and people could enroll in his course. I'm sure there was some sort of revenue share on the back end. So coming to my closing thought here, let's see, Finisher Picks, another one. Okay. So like a place where people can buy their photos for after they do their races. And then of course they Map My Fitness, and those things that have recently were acquired by Outside. But my point is like, okay, those are the non-media entities that are unique, valuable, and provide opportunity to monetize. Like there's a transaction included in those. So how do you point people towards all those different non-media things? It has to be through their media. So again, just summarizing my point again, there needs to be something that brings this all together, and I think what has become so clear every time Outside is in the news is people are just scratching their head of like, what's going on here? Like seriously, what's going on? Like this is getting confusing.
Yeah. I mean, I think two things. Number one, you need to make an ecosystem where this stuff fits together. And so if you were creator friendly and you had a platform where many creators could come in and do their thing, you could see a scenario where, somebody could make a video running an event and then there was a link to registration for the following year's event there and they got a kickback from that. And anybody could make their video from that earn money from the video, but also earn money from the affiliate deals on the back end of that. That could make sense. One thing that I have to push back on, though, and this is sort of my second point here, is like, think about your kitchen. You have probably every spice known to man, as do I. But like, I don't put garlic, thyme, rosemary, onion powder, paprika, chili powder. Like, I don't throw them all in the same pot. And so, I don't think that every single acquisition that Outside made should be smashed together. There's probably like three buckets, and maybe that consumer or the content creator centric stuff is a third of the platforms, and maybe there's stuff that is just sort of standalone or fits in somewhere else, and maybe some stuff needs to be passed back to the originals or whatever. I mean, there's a big thing happening in the bike industry right now where a lot of companies sold during the pandemic at their height. Troy Lee Designs, one of those. And then they bought it. They ended up buying it back after the brand couldn't figure out how to make it work. There's no shame in getting rid of stuff that maybe doesn't fit the future way of going. But I have to think that one of Outside's big goals for the future of their brand is going to be growth. And how might you have millions of people using the platform? I think that if you wanted to emulate YouTube in a way, you could make the outdoor version of YouTube.
Ah,
And if you have the ecosystem set up, because on YouTube, you're sort of on your own. You make a video, you post it, and you can put links in the description. But what if you could do that, but then also have links to your other platforms like Trailforks? Or, I mean, yeah, sure, Strava isn't in network, but still, like, it's relevant to athletes. So, like, what if you could integrate other platforms with it so people could see the video of you doing this activity, but also link out to your Gaia file from the race or whatever? And then at the bottom in the description, there's a link to the athlete reg for the following year's race. Like, they could do stuff that YouTube probably couldn't in a more interesting way. And then they if they make it easy for lots and lots of people to start putting stuff on there, again, they're bringing their audiences, their communities there. More people are posting there. You could see how a flywheel effect begins to happen. Where I'm pushing back the most on just hiring some good creators to make content for each one of those is that I think it emulates the existing stuff too much. And it also doesn't give any room for more people to come in and continue building on. And so you're basically only growing on the strength of a handful of creators. Whereas if you created an ecosystem for creators and you did the fundamentals right, then you can scale and have thousands of creators and they're all making something off of being there. There are people on YouTube that are making $1 million a month making content, and there are people that are making $1 a month. And that's okay. They all contribute in a meaningful way, and they're all using the platform. And I think that's the difference that I'm trying to separate here of like, yeah, you could get 10 Mr. Beasts for your platform, or you could have everybody on earth on the platform and bringing value and bringing engagement and bringing their community and building their community there. Like, you have to make it comfortable for the creators so that they will be incentivized to bring their community.
I don't hate it, but isn't that effectively what they're trying to do with the Outside activity feed? And you said it's a complete ghost town?
I think, but there's no incentive for me to tell
So
anybody to go look at it.
so you have to match that tech with an incentive. And that's basically what you're saying is like you got to provide some sort of way to help outdoor creators monetize.
Yeah, it has to be meaningful. There's no meaning for me to drive people there at this point, and there's nothing for me to show them other than a link to my YouTube video.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'm semi persuaded. I think it's a good idea. My fear is that if it were to go public or whatever, then there would be another moment where everybody scratches their head and they're like, well, what the hell? Why wouldn't I just publish my things on YouTube as I have been for the last 5 or 10 years? Or why would I publish on Outside rather than on any number of distribution platforms that have network effects already built into them?
You're not wrong, but I think that they have levers that they could pull that would be interesting enough to creators that would incentivize them to be there. And I think the further down that path they go of what would need to be true that would make it impossible for the best creators in all of the outdoor verticals to be here, if you could answer that question, you would have something really powerful on your hands. I agree with you. I don't think like the existing setup that they have right now is compelling enough. But what would need to be true to make it unavoidable to be here, impossible to say no to the deal, could be an interesting place to go. I mean, look, everybody's done this. TikTok does it. Substack is currently doing it. Twitter tried, but they really didn't. They didn't do what they were, what the creators were asking for. They didn't really do. And there's a few other macro problems happening there too, but we don't need to go there.
All right, so I'm on outsideonline.com because I'm curious about whether they are pursuing an affiliate model here. So I just clicked on the 8 best winter boots for men and women. This is an article from last October. So this is under the Winter Gear Guide tab at the top of their website. And it does look like there are a number of products listed here with what I'm assuming are affiliate links. Yes. If you buy through our links, we may earn an affiliate commission. This supports our mission to get more people active and outside. So, if Recon MTB is launching right now with this, it seems like being their monetization strategy, going full content to commerce, probably through affiliate, and basically making their site a place where you can come learn a lot about mountain biking, but then also buy the next helmet you're going to wear on your next downhill assault. Why couldn't Outside? Yeah, I mean, it seems like there'd be big opportunity to just invest only in that, like shop.outside.com. I mean, if you think about like the feed, right? The feed has become the place where a lot of people buy their endurance sport nutrition. Mm-hmm. It feels like you could have shop.outside.com or whatever and have it just be a massive e-commerce store for all things outdoor and probably just have the brands drop ship to customers.
Yeah.
So have less overhead and just get affiliate commission on the transactions.
I think it just has to come down to, what would have to be true to make this an unavoidable location for creators to make their content, available. And then next step, what would make this impossible for users to avoid? Like, why would they have to be here? I don't think anybody is looking for an additional activity feed at this point. Like, I've got the, all the apps on my phone, and I still like TikTok is amazing in terms of an algorithm and delivering exactly what I want to know, what I want to see, even though I didn't know that I wanted to see that.
See, I haven't even downloaded TikTok.
It's dangerous.
How do you think I feel about another different platform?
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah. Like, who was asking for another activity feed?
Nobody.
Nobody. But like, I would love to see all my favorite creators in one place and not get hit with a bunch of other random stuff in the meantime. I would like to have something along those lines. I would like to make more money making content. I would like to be partnered with brands who are in the outside ecosystem. And I think that's something that they could probably leverage. Hey, we've got direct access to the top 10 mountain bike creators on the planet. You guys have any interest in working with them? Because we can facilitate that conversation. Like, that's another whole lever that's not being pulled at this point that could be in a way that, yeah, it's sort of like closed versus open ecosystem that you and I are kind of debating, really. You're talking about sort of a closed, like, what if we have people on staff that are making content? And I'm saying open it wide open and let the outdoor industry be heard.
I wonder if those are mutually exclusive things. All right, so let's close this down. One thing I just want to say is that in this day and age, people consume content via podcast, newsletter, and YouTube. I don't know of a good like trail running podcast that Outside does.
Yeah.
I receive their emails that come through like Outside Run. Can't say it's super compelling stuff. I can't remember the last time I've like clicked through to watch a YouTube video that Outside has produced. So I think in the pursuit of building this giant home of athletes, they were focusing on, I don't know, like places that shinier objects, and took their eye off the secret sauce of what made Outside so compelling to so many people for such a long time. And that was media and storytelling. And if people like me aren't interacting with their content, like I am the person that interacts with this type of content 100%. And they need to reinvest in that, I think, for any of this stuff to work.
Yeah.
Is my personal thesis here.
You know, when we talked to Robin, we asked him first question, what does the outdoor industry need? And he talked about, you know, everybody being friends. Well, what if Outside was everybody's friend? What if Outside was like, here's our top 10 podcasts, and we don't even own these podcasts, but we're going to shout out Second Nature, and we're going to shout out For the Long Run and Free Trail and whatever else, because this is the move. Like, you guys got to check this stuff out. We're going to use the voice that we do have to like give back in a meaningful way to everything else, even if we don't have a stake in it. And we're going to put people in a position to be successful, and we're going to help them get to that next level. Like, how would people respond to that? And also, again, going back to my open ecosystem idea, if you've got people that are putting content on your platform that are like the 7 best winter boots or whatever, then Outside can get back to making the stuff that matters, like the actual journalistic stuff that we know and love from Outside. Like, they can refocus their existing people on the important stuff and leave the buyer's guide stuff to, you know, the everyday creators that are doing the product tests and stuff like that.
This is a bit of a tangent as we close this Outside convo, but do you think we've reached peak newsletter and podcast?
Never.
Really? Because I don't know, like, this Substack phenomenon is fantastic, and it's allowing everybody to get their thoughts on paper and out into the world and into the inboxes of people who might find it compelling. I just can't get through it anymore. Like, I don't have space for new stuff.
I know. I sent you that Billy Oppenheimer one every week. Shout
yeah,
out to
I
Christian
know.
Rawls.
I subscribed. I still haven't read a single word of it
So
because I'm just
good.
like, I got too many of these.
Yeah,
things.
we got to give a nod to Christian Rawls. He put me on that one. That's one of my favorite ones,
But
actually.
the reason I bring it up is because they say there's 2 ways to make money in media: bundling and unbundling.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the Substack phenomenon is like the massive unbundling.
Yeah, yeah.
But
which can
very
be exhausting.
very few of those people are going to be able to actually make a living off of their individual Substacks.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's sort of my point, is like, who better than Outside to aggregate some of these people who are writing for Substacks, who would love to make full-time job out of it, but who don't have the audience to do so? Why not bring them into Outside? They get paid a salary of some kind from the brand, and they get a bigger platform and megaphone to use through Outside. And Outside gets people who can, you know, have that creator-led voice of an individual, which we all understand to be the way people want to consume information now. Anyway, we've gone 45 minutes on this. I know you have other stuff you want to get to. Do you have any closing comments?
We did get through a lot. I think at the end of the day, the thing that you and I are both saying is that the ability for Outside to consider including more voices and make it beneficial for both the audience and the creators themselves is where the future should probably be. It's not in acquisition of more shiny objects. It's not in trying to, you know, release more festivals. Like, I'm not seeing the value as a consumer for any of that stuff. Where I would love to see is the industry supporting itself and helping everyone grow across the board. And I think that if you can do that, you can start to regain and rebuild that trust and authority that has been absolutely just hammered the last however long.
All right. Let's just reiterate. Nobody should take advice from us.
And we recognize that this stuff is really,
so
really hard.
Yes. Business is hard. That is our motto here at Second Nature.
Yeah, we put out so much content on our own and understand like the effort that goes into creating just content, not even the other technology that's layered on top of that. The Outside has an unenviable task, and you're right. People were really happy when Robin came in because they saw like, oh, we're gonna get the support we've always wanted. And I think that as somebody who's been in the outdoor industry a long time, it's like all we want is for more people to care about the things that we love. But ultimately, yeah, this is art. This is not business in the
Exactly.
same way, you know?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, good sentiment to close on. No judgment here. Like obviously we're sort of poking holes in somebody else's business and it's not necessarily our business to do that. But I think there is a lot that we can learn here. We all should root for outside to refine that footing and we'll all be in a better place if and when they do. Moving
Absolutely.
on, Lucy, I understand you've been having a lot of calls with people. They want your advice. Hey, can I pick your brain? Can I take you out to coffee? And so now you're going to basically take all of our listeners out to coffee by delivering an education here on the podcast. Where do you want to start?
To be fair, I haven't taken that many because it's been pretty hectic already. But I have been hearing similar themes in conversations lately, and a lot of people are still very interested in having jobs in the outdoor industry, and it's a common theme in the Slack channel, in DMs, in conversations, in these meetups and stuff like that. And there are some people who really want to be in the outdoor industry that maybe haven't had a chance to be involved yet. And a lot of the advice that I've been giving is like you need to have a running start. We did a podcast a couple weeks ago with Lisa Schaller from Audi, and she was saying the same thing. She's like the process of getting hired in the outdoor industry does not start with the application. In fact, if that's where you're starting, start over. You basically need to develop this momentum of relationships, of sort of a portfolio of whatever it is that you're trying to do. If you're trying to be in events, if you're trying to work with athletes, if you're trying to be in marketing, you need to start raising your hand well before you apply to that job to show your expertise, because the outside industry doesn't have the room necessarily to train you up once you get there. And the worst place you could possibly be in a job interview is to say, if you just take a chance on me, I'm sure I could do this. I know I could do it if you gave me the chance. That is not inspiring for an employer. An employer wants to hear, I've already done this. Give me the keys and I'll help you take your stuff up a notch. That's where they want to be. And you need to be able to build your bench strength. You need to be able to build what you can do and your experience so that you can be in that conversation. The reason why I got hired at Red Bull is absolutely because I sat across from them and said, I've done all this stuff without a bull and sun on my business card. Give me that business card and let's see where we can go. And talking to the people that were in that interview, they were like, we couldn't figure out why you didn't already work at Red Bull. You were already doing this stuff. And yeah, you were already like an employee before you even started here. You did all the things, and we just knew that we could hand it to you and you'd be able to run with it. And sure enough, that worked out. And so I think like, what are the ways where you could develop that experience, and how might you develop relationships in the outdoor industry? And I think one of the things that you might think about is, what is the surface area that you want to build out? For example, if you wanted to work in athlete marketing, how might you approach an existing um, agent and say like, hey, I'd love to be able to offer this service to help you out. Looks like you need some help with social. It looks like you need some help with day to day, or like, I see your athlete is coming to this event. Is there something I could do to help out your athlete when they're visiting our state for this race or whatever? And starting to work with agents, starting to work with agencies, starting to figure out ways where you can kind of get in there and be useful, with the idea that you're bringing value. Not, I'm coming here so that I can get this from you and your athletes, but how can I just be valuable to what you're doing? If you use that as a lens to develop your experience and build relationships in the outdoor industry, you will be in a much better spot than if you came in with sort of like handout, trying to, you know, I'm here to network, like that's not the move. So I think this idea of, how can you put yourself in a position that maybe is a little uncommon. Like, who's hitting up an agent to help them with athlete social? If you want to get into social media for a brand, maybe a different way to do it is, what are the connection points between brands and athletes, and how might I be in that intersection so that I not only work with athletes, but maybe I'm the between the brand and the athlete, or I'm part of the team that's helping those two get the job done. That could be a really fascinating place to build some strength, because again, it's an area where athletes need help and brands need help, and you could jump in and start building some experience there, but also through that experience build the relationships with both the athletes as well as the brands.
Mm. What I'm hearing, Lutzi, is that you just have to be proactive.
Yes. Yeah. And have more than a 1 month timeline for this goal. Like, if you really want to be in the outdoor industry, what if it took a year to get here? What if it took 2 years to get here? How
It
yeah.
will.
Also
Always
that,
assume it's going to take twice as
yeah.
long and be twice as hard. So, are you familiar with this Silicon Valley meme recently of you can just do you can just do things?
No, tell me about it.
It's basically as simple as that. Just like
You could
you can just do things. Just go do stuff, right? Whether you're working internally at a brand or you're working on something else yourself, you can just do things. Be freaking proactive. And actually, it reminds me, you and Elisa talked about this on the pod. I can't remember exactly, but she kind of made the point of like she was gonna go back to graduate school, I think, and instead took more of an entry level job at Adidas because it like spoke more to her and she wanted to be involved in their outdoor division, even though on paper it was maybe below her experience level and capabilities, and that going to business school might look better on a resume. It's like, no, I'm going to be proactive. And then, you can just do things. Here she is. She leads Adidas Terex in North America, which is probably a freaking sweet gig. And it is probably all because of her proactivity in that moment of like, not being afraid to take a job that would theoretically be below her pay grade in service of just protecting her pride and ego. It's like, no, I'm going to be proactive here. I'm going to find ways to contribute. And over time, the cream rises to the top. And that's, I don't know. She would probably describe it differently than I am, but at least that was my interpretation of her
Yeah.
description.
Well, she was an intern before that even too. So she really started, at the bottom to get her foot in the door, to get experience, to build relationships with people at the brand. And then she took a role. And my journey at Red Bull was super similar. I was at events shooting video for my own stuff, and then oh, I've got a sweet clip of this, and I would send it to the Red Bull guy. And then, found myself in a situation where they called me and said, like, hey, there's a restructure happening. My buddy at Red Bull called me and said, there's a restructure happening. And I built that relationship, not even planning to work at Red Bull, but just like, I just want to be homies with these guys. And he called me, said that. I took a job in Cincinnati, Ohio to start working at Red Bull. Who does that? No offense to my Ohio homies, but like, I
No
started in,
offense to Cincinnati. I mean, go Bengals,
I mean, but also that was a tertiary market, and that ended up being probably one of the best things in my career, because I got to learn sort of how Red Bull worked. I got to see how everything fit together. And in a place like Cincinnati, they weren't really like living or dying by the marketing and sales in that area. And so I got to kind of do everything in a low pressure environment, so that when the San Francisco job opened, I had done enough in this tertiary market to prove myself, but I'd also learned stuff without people like putting me under a magnifying glass. So then I could go out to San Francisco and be successful. So it's these little steps back to just build your experience up, build your understanding of how stuff works, build the relationships, because I had all the relationships. A year in Cincinnati, I had been interfacing with HQ people. I'd been interfacing with brand people. And the one thing that people forget is that people move on and move up. And the relationships that you make now at this intern level, those people will eventually be the VPs of these companies, or at least some of them. And you'll have their contact because you will have been with them from that point. And so, there's this whole like rising tide lifts all ships situation that comes along with it too. But I think like the best advice that I can give is that you have to build up your experience and your relationships, and no one is going to give that to you. You have to show up with the mindset of like, how can I bring the most value to these people? And just like in the outside example, how can I make it impossible for them to not pay attention to me? If I bring them insane value all the time, they're going to call me back. They're going to think of me when an opportunity arises. And that's exactly what's happened time and time again in all of our careers.
Awesome. I love it. You know who else brings a lot of value and who has been immensely proactive in their career?
What's that?
Matt Sharkey dropping a bomb on LinkedIn yesterday. We're going to shoehorn this in at the end here. Big shout out to Sharkey, who's part of, it seems like, the founding team of Smart Magic. Lutzi, you have more insight into what the heck this is, and we're going to have Sharkey on to talk all about it. But it seems like kind of a super agency coming together, and Sharkey's the CMO. Sounds like he's going to be more or less leading a lot of the operations day to day. You want to fill some of the holes in for the listeners?
I don't know all the details, but Smart Magic seems like yeah, exactly like you said, it's a super agency. They basically took two giant agencies that kind of do these different things and put them together so they can do strategy, execution, and then probably everything in between. I'm probably butchering it, and Sharky's probably on a run somewhere just cringing. But one other thing I want to congratulate Matt Sharkey on, for longtime Second Nature listeners, we have been harassing Sharkey because we recommended this book, Barbarian Days, which if you haven't read, you should absolutely read it. Doesn't matter if you're a surfer or not. Neither one of us are. This book is probably one of the best books about an outdoor sport that I've ever read. And we recommended it to Sharky, and he sat on it for ages, and we harassed him on multiple podcasts and multiple text streams.
I remember I said, shame on you publicly on the podcast.
Yes.
Because of it.
And I'm happy to report that he actually read it, and he loved it.
There we go.
Worth it. Worth all the harassing.
Shout out Bill Finnegan, the author. The greatest book ever written.
It wouldn't be a pod if we didn't recommend at least one book.
Yeah. All right. BPC, Lutzi, close us down.
Oh, I guess I've got one more book that we're bringing to this one. Longtime friend of ours, listener to the pod, part of the Second Nature community, our buddy Dre, just launched a book. In fact, this week it goes live at, I think, Adweek in London. He co-wrote a book with the founder of WeTransfer, and it's called Not a Playbook. And I'm so excited. I actually have an advanced copy here, and I'm super into it. I think you guys are going to dig it too. But Not a Playbook launches, I think by the time this pod comes out, it will be available to the masses. But Dre has been putting a bunch of stuff on both his Substack and on LinkedIn about the book. But to have a front row seat to everything that WeTransfer has done and direct line to the founder and the guy that, ran the show for many, many years, there's some really interesting conversations that came out of that. And being friends with Dre and being able to hear some of these stories firsthand has been really fun too. So Not a Playbook. You got to check it out. We're going to get Dre finally on the pod. His Substack Brand New Story has been a perennial favorite of many people here. And we got to hear him speak.
Heck yeah. Okay, I'll close this down. I came unprepared again, but I'll just close with an idea here. Doesn't really fit into the traditional BPC rubric, but last weekend, Chianti by UTMB happened in Italy, Aaron. I was also race directing the Big Alta here in NorCal. But over there on the Italian countryside was a Western States golden ticket race. Do you know what happened there, Aaron?
I know who won, but tell me more.
Do you know who got second?
Killian, right?
That's right. Do you know who got third?
No.
Okay. To our viewers and listeners, Jim Walmsley won the race, and won rather easily, I should say, and very impressively. Second place, Killian Jornet, the GOAT of GOATs. Third place, Vincent Bouillard, the 2024 UTMB champion.
Very cool.
Those two guys now have automatic entries into the Western States 100. Of course, Jim returns as the defending champion, so his entry was already a foregone conclusion. The Western States 100 this year, Aaron, is going to be an absolute face melter. Jim Walmsley, Killian, Vincent, Rod Farvard, last year's second place finisher, third fastest time ever. Hayden Hawks, third place last year and one of the greats of all time. Adam Peterman, the 2022 champion. David Roche, who just broke Matt Carpenter's course record at Leadville last year. And many, many others, like 24 other men who would have a chance to podium. It's going to be the greatest men's 100-mile race in the history of the world. It's not a brand. It's not a product, but it will be a piece of content.
It's
and a long one.
A mountain of content.
And yeah, sort of talking my own book here. But you can tell here, Aaron, as the person who has the honor and privilege to man that broadcast booth on race day, I'm getting fired up already.
I can feel it, man. I think that's what makes so much of the free trail stuff so special is that you are so fired up. You love it, man. Like you love nerding out on that stuff. And that's why we're all come to listen to you, is that you're so fired up.
Have I told you about the project?
Which project? There's many projects going on right now.
This will, I guess, be the subject of a future Second Nature podcast.
All right.
Yeah. People will probably know by the time this episode goes up, because I think we will have teased it publicly. But in case we haven't, let's just save it for a future pod.
Save it. Yeah, we got time. We'll talk about yet another secret project. I love it. Very cool.
All right, buddy. Great episode. Any closing comments?
No, I feel like we really got a chance to air out the outside thing in a pretty meaningful way. And I feel like, I hope they listened to that. I hope that they got some value out of that and made them think a little bit more about a different approach that they could potentially take. And maybe they're already thinking about this stuff. Who knows? I think from the outside, of outside, there's a lot of head scratching going on. Like, what are they actually trying to do? And maybe they have a really clear plan and vision and focus. And maybe they're already working on some of the stuff we're talking about. But man, what a huge opportunity. Like if you started from zero with $150 million and you wanted to make the home for athletes, what might that look like? And instead of taking the baggage of all these acquisitions and trying to fit a bunch of random puzzle pieces together, how might you just start over, clear the slate for a second?
How might we? Shout out Holmberg.
Yeah. How might you do it?
I texted you and Steve that somebody's got to make a t-shirt that just says, how might we? Wouldn't that be fire?
It is my new, like that and what would need to be true. Those two phrases have like defined everything that I'm thinking about right now. What would need to be true for this to happen? How might we do this? Like those two things, that's the approach you have to take, because it allows you to really think so clearly about your direction and what you're trying to get done. And yeah, man, I don't know. There's something there. There's magic. Just needs to be uncovered.
All righty. Great place to end it. So to our audience, make sure you jump in Slack. The Second Naturalists are always on point with their contributions to that great communication avenue there. Go join us. Link in the show notes. Subscribe to our newsletter. Lutzi puts together a banger every single Friday to land in your inbox. And even though I just made the argument that we've reached peak newsletter, this one deserves to be in your rotation. secondnature.media to sign up. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. We've started posting a little bit more on the social channels. And yeah, am I forgetting anything?
You got it.
All right. For Aaron Lutzi, I'm Debo. See you guys soon. Peace out.